UNDRIP by World Changing Kids.
What is UNDRIP? UNDRIP stands for United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, a human rights document that sets global standards for the rights of Indigenous peoples. The Declaration's goal is to protect the survival and well-being of Indigenous peoples, making sure everyone is treated equally with respect and honor. There are 46 articles in UNDRIP that all matter. None are more important than any other.
What is the United Nations? When the UN was originally created, there are 51 members or countries. Now there are 193. Two of the countries that aren't part of the UN are Vatican City and Palestine. The UN is an organization that strives to provide basic needs to everyone. That includes water, food, shelter, medicine, and a clean environment.
They also strive for peace between countries. To remain a part of the UN, you have to pay a certain amount of money to different parts of the organization to make their plans possible. All decisions are made by voting. Example, UNDRIP. The UN has made a long journey on their way to reconciliation, but they are making some good progress.
1982, work begins on draft declaration. 2007, UN adopts the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Canada votes against it at first. 2010, Canada supports the declaration. 2016, Canada commits to implementing the declaration. 2020, Canada introduces the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. 2021, the act becomes law and work to implement begins and continues.
Why is implementing UNDRIP important? Implementing UNDRIP is important because it is mentioned in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's Call to Action number 43 and number 44. Now that the act to implement became law in 2021, it provides a set of rules that force our governments to ensure that Indigenous peoples are respected. Let's now look at some examples of whether or not this is happening.
Article number 7. Indigenous individuals have the rights to life, physical and mental integrity, liberty, and security of person. Indigenous peoples have the collective right to live in freedom, peace, and security as distinct peoples, and shall not be subjected to any act of genocide or any other act of violence, including forcibly removing children of the group to another group. To us, this means Indigenous peoples have the right to live safe and free environment, free from racism and oppression, and Indigenous children have the right to grow up in their community, culture, and language. This video shows that this is not happening. According to Canada's 2016 census, 52% of children in foster care across the country were Indigenous. In Manitoba, they made up 90% of the province's 1,000 foster care kids. The proposed changes to the foster care system. Try all possibilities of family members providing care for the children before they are adopted out to non-Indigenous families. Provide more funding to the families to be able to take care of their children and keep them at home.
Article 11. Indigenous peoples have the right to practice and revitalize their cultural traditions and customs. This includes the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures, such as archaeological and historical sites, artifacts, designs, ceremonies, technologies, and visual and performing arts and literature. Good news on this article. Anishinaabe Ojibikon is an Anishinaabe-led archaeological field school and a joint effort between the Anishinaabe Algonquin communities of Kitikan, Zibi, Anishinaabe, and the Algonquins of Pequannogan First Nation. The group was founded after a stone Mekoman knife was discovered within the parliamentary precinct during the rehabilitation of Center Block in 2019. The purpose of the field school is to build capacity in the field of archaeology for the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, and the team is comprised of members from both communities. The field school most notably conducts archaeological excavations within the heart of Anishinaabe Algonquin Territory, better known today as the National Capital Region, which encompasses the present-day Ottawa-Gatineau area.
Article 25. Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationships relationship with their traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used lands, territories, waters, and coastal seas, and other resources to uphold their responsibilities to future generation in this regard.
Article 26. Indigenous peoples have the right to land, territories, and resources which they traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. Indigenous people have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands, territories, and resources that they possess by reason of traditional ownership or other traditional occupations or use, as well as those which they have otherwise acquired. States shall give legal recognition and protection to these lands, territories, and resources. Such recognition shall be conducted with due respect to the customs, traditions, and land tenures systems of the Indigenous peoples concerned.
Article 29. Indigenous peoples have the right to the conservation and protection of the environment and to the productive capacity of their lands or territories and resources. States shall establish and implement assistance programs for Indigenous peoples with such conservation and protection without discrimination. States shall take effective measures to ensure that no storage or disposal of hazardous materials shall take place on the lands and territories of Indigenous peoples without their free, prior, and informed consent. States shall also take effective measures to ensure, as needed, that programs for monitoring, maintaining, and restoring the health of Indigenous peoples, as developed and implemented by the peoples affected by such materials, are duly implemented. All of these articles are related to the land and water.
As you can see, this is not happening. Grassy Narrows First Nation. In the late 1960s, a paper mill dumped 9,000 kilograms of mercury into the river, poisoning the water, fish, and people. Once ingested, the mercury never goes away. It passed from one generation to the next, from mother to child. 1,000 residents live in Grassy Narrows. 3 generations have been affected. 90% of the population experiences symptoms of mercury poisoning. This can include speech impediments, learning disabilities, and more.
Nuclear waste dump at Chalk River. Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, CNL, wants to build a radioactive waste dump, a near-surface disposal facility 1 kilometer from the Ottawa River, where we get our drinking water. Kibawik First Nation is fighting this project by saying that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission did not consult with First Nations as required under UNDRIP. They are worried about the damage this could cause to the land, wildlife, trees, and water.
Article 13. Indigenous peoples have the right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their histories, languages, oral traditions, philosophies, writing systems, and literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for communities, places, and persons. States shall take effective measures to ensure that this right is protected and also to ensure that Indigenous peoples can understand and be understood in political, legal, and administrative proceedings where necessary through the provision of interpretation or by other appropriate means.
Good news on this article. First Nation MPP Sol Macamakwa addressed the Ontario Legislature in his own language, Anishinaabe or Ojibwe, making the first time in the province's history that a language other than English and French was permitted in the chambers for official purposes.
Article 14. Indigenous peoples have the right to establish and control their educational systems in situations providing education in their own languages in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning. Indigenous individuals, particularly children, have the right to all levels and forms of education of the state without discrimination. States shall, in conjunction with Indigenous peoples, take effective measures ordered for Indigenous individuals, particularly children, including those living outside their communities, to have access, when possible, to an education in their own culture provided in their own language. First Nation students on reserve receive 30 to 50% less funding for education than students off reserve. It's time to help #end the gap and tell all children in Canada that their dreams matter equally, no matter where they're born.
And Gilbert, we would love any feedback or comments or thoughts or improvements that you had for our presentation.
Really, first of all, congratulations. You have captured some very, very important critical pieces of UNDRIP. Each one of those sections are really important and build on each other. You've kind of pulled out, it's kind of teasing out those key pieces that are really important to all First Nations, Indigenous people across Canada and around the world, because the UN Declaration is for all Indigenous people to have that recognition, that relationship, and certainly in Canada, the importance of having a renewed relationship, a relationship that should have taken place when the British or the French arrived on this continent, but it didn't happen that way. And it is hope. And certainly when I listen to you speak, and you all speak very well, you articulate it very well, even some of the Anishinaabe words, that demonstrates to me that there is something really positive happening. And you're a demonstration of that. You're a demonstration because you're leaders now. Some would say, well, you're the future leaders, but you are the leaders now. You are the voice now of many people in many ways. You're a youthful voice, but a voice filled with tremendous knowledge in looking at this kind of work. And I'm sure you will continue looking at other things that are really important to Indigenous people in Canada. And no matter where you go, as you grow up and you go on to university, who knows where life is going to take you. You will be taking this knowledge with you. You will be taking this understanding and this caring, this reaching out for Indigenous people around the world, and really for all people that are suffering, all people that are struggling, and being able to be allies, or allies is not a good word, but being able to stand up with people and using your voice, using your knowledge. It's not through anger, but through the strength of your words. I'm impressed of how you pull this together and how meaningful this is. And I'm hoping you're going to share this with others and other classes. And that generates a lot of discussion, because there's a UN declaration, and then, building on the 94, and you allude to it, to the 94 calls to action, and then to the 230 odd recommendations that were made in regard to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and gender diverse people, the Royal Commission, the Indian Act. All of these things come together, and the UN Declaration is one of those pieces that are going to be fundamental and foundational, if indeed, as you put it, if Canada moves forward. There has been, and you speak to in regards to Saul, I think Macquarie, I'm just trying to remember his name. He's a member of Parliament in Ontario, that he used his Indigenous language in Parliament. It has also been done in the House of Commons by some Indigenous people. It's only a small token, but it's a demonstration of that Indigenous languages. There's 70 odd languages, 70 in Canada. 70 different Indigenous languages are still alive, struggling, but they're still alive and can be used in different forms. And certainly in Ottawa, in the federal parliament, the representatives there, whenever positive. And I would encourage you, I also encourage that if you know one word, two words, wherever you're at, try to use them. No, you don't have to learn all of the language, but you're using them. And that's a show of respect. And that's a demonstration that the land that you're on, all of the Outaouais, all of that is the ancestral lands of the Algonquins, just like the UNDRIP speaks about, that recognition and that acknowledgement, with the goal that there will be true reconciliation. and understanding. We have a long way to go. We have a long way to go because UNDRIP is also opening up the door to truth. There's still a lot of truth. And again, you refer to the situation of family care or home care, foster care, and the large numbers of children in foster care in Manitoba. But I would say in every province across Canada, many Indigenous children are ending up away from their community in many, many homes under many different situations. And although I won't go too much into it, although there is a law called Bill C-92, Bill C-92 is now allowing communities who want it to develop their own child and family services law. Now that's going to take time and it's going to take resources. It's the beginning. It's the beginning. Unfortunately, there continues to be large numbers of children being apprehended. The other thing I would UNDRIP, well, you got me thinking about a whole bunch of things as I was listening to you presenting, keeping in mind that more than 50% of First Nations in Canada and many Inuit from the north don't live in their communities. They're now living in urban centers, Ottawa, Gatineau, Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver, anywhere else across Canada. They've had to leave their community because there was not an education, because there was no proper health services that other Canadians get, that they weren't having access to potable water. They had no water in their house, or the water, like you mentioned, the mercury, the water was, not potable. You couldn't drink it. You couldn't bathe your babies. And if you did, it had long-term effects into the future generations. So really, I have to acknowledge from my heart, really, and what I feel, you're a tremendous group. You're amazing. You're amazing in your youthful reaching out and understanding and the complexity of all of this. You're grasping some things, I can tell you, that many adults don't grasp and understanding, but you're getting it and you're continuing to explore it. You're not just leaving it, you're continuing on a journey of learning and incorporating in your values the way you're going to live your life and you're going to move forward in regards to Indigenous issues, but really other issues of concern.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. And I should have said that this was not an exhaustive look at UNDRIP because we only had 3 weeks. We only had 3 Thursdays to prepare and then present to you today. So yeah, we definitely will keep looking at it and try to get an example for every article would be great to because I feel that really is how they can wrap their head around it. Well, how any of us can. Like this article and this is an example. Yeah, so we can keep doing it. Izzy, you had a question or a comment.
Yeah, I actually didn't know about the mercury situation until we learned about it in this article, and it really kind of opened my eyes to the things we have been doing, and that's just one thing.
It's a very good point, and I would mention also, and Grassy Narrows is in Ontario, Western Ontario, but a community like Kitigan-Zibi, which is not far off from where you're all at, we too, for over half of the community, don't have potable water. That means we cannot drink from the tap. We, over 50% of the community, we get bottled water every week that we have to, that 5-liter jug and all of that. We're not allowed to drink it. And in our case, it's because we have natural uranium in the water. And that natural uranium, if we were to drink it or drink it a lot, could potentially cause cancer. Now, we don't know if over all of the years that this has been going on, if people have passed away in the community of cancer, but we're not sure how that is connected. But certainly we're one of those communities, again, that like Grassy Narrows, for them it was a dumping from a mill. A mill dumped mercury into the water, their source of water, while for us it's natural, unfortunately, they were having to live with. But all of that to say, and UNDRIP speaks about that. For us, water is sacred. The way the river flows are sacred. It speaks to us if we're willing to listen to it. And when water is contaminated, it is sending us a message. It's telling us something. It's a little bit like, you're not taking care of me. You're not taking care of me. And if you're not taking care of me, I'm not going to take care of you. You take care of me, I take care of you. And that's the water and the biodiversity, everything we do. We're all connected to all of that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that answer and for the question and comment, Izzy. That was great. Anyone else have any comment or question about any of the videos we watched? I do know the video that we watched on foster care, there was a part in it where, remember, a young woman said she was taken out of her family and placed in a non-Indigenous home. And then she found out years later that there had been family members who wanted to take her in and were willing to. Do you remember that? Awesome Kids?
Yeah, we did. We watched the video and it she I think her grandparents wanted to adopt her and her aunts and uncles all wanted to adopt her.
Well, there was a time in Canada where Indigenous children were taken, and that's not that long ago, in the sense, it was in my lifetime, where they would take children away and they would put them up for adoption, but they would put them up for adoption and then put an advertisement. And advertisements have been found. And it would say, do you want to adopt an Indian child for $10? So many Indigenous people did get adopted and very often were adopted into the USA. They were totally had to, taken out of the country and kind of got lost, and some now have been trying to come back to reconnect with their community, but it's very difficult when you're 40 years old or 30 years old and you were never told that you belong to a particular nation or community and you're just beginning that connection. And I suppose that's why the UN Declaration is so important. It was trying to capture all of that and to slow it down, at least slow down what's going on. And also that Indigenous people have lots to continue to contribute to making Canada and the world a better place with traditional Indigenous knowledge about the land and the water, the species, and all of these things. And it's only through collaboration and acknowledgement of that knowledge, that knowledge very often is not written in books. It's oral. It's passed on through our stories. It's passed on into the language sometimes. And if more connection could be made, then I think the land we live on, hopefully things will get better and with climate change and not worse. But we got to do that together.
Yeah, go ahead, Izzy.
Yeah, I've actually this talk reminded me of something that happened at my old school. Like every now and then we have like someone from an Indigenous community teach us something about their community. So I think when I was in grade 2, we had, I think, someone from Anishinaabe community come and teach us about a sport they played. I think it was some sort of like wrestling.
Mm.
And we learned about that. And I think it was in grade 6 even that we had they teach us a hunting song to find a lost hunter, which was really interesting too. And like my school's very forward about trying to get more communities into our lives.
Wonderful.
That's great. We are wrapping up to the 5:45 time. Did anyone else want to add anything or say anything?
Yeah, Ruby.
Oh, perfect. Sorry, Ruby, you're not on my screen.
No
So there you go.
Oh, I see. No worries. I just want to say that it's just like such an important thing to like talk about. And I love seeing so many different like communities and people like speaking up about this and just talking about it. And I just think it's just so great to see. And I'm just so glad that like we're doing this. I'm so glad we can like share this with you. And it really warms my heart that like, yeah.
Miigwech for your words.
Oh, beautiful. I should scan all the way through. You're right. I couldn't see everyone. Anyone else? Are we good? Should we say goodbye? I put some words in the chat that Gilbert had taught us before, if you remember. So yes, miigwech is thank you. So we can all say that. And then Gilbert, you had said mad Joshin. Is that how you said it?
Majoshin.
Joshin is a greeting to say goodbye, but it's like a sweeter goodbye. It's more like until I see you again is what you had said.
Yeah.
So lovely, beautiful children. We can unmute and we can all say that. You can say miigwech, Gilbert.
Miigwech.
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 And mad Joshin.
Majoshin.
Majoshin.
Mm-hmm.
Majoshin and miigwech.
Miigwech.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, thank you. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.
Yeah.